Guys, and welcome back to my channel. Now today I thought we'd look at custom reptile habitat tanks and the decoration packs and do a little review, since I've now had Diegos for about 2 years and Gizmos for a year. I will link both tanks and decoration packs below, and as a disclaimer, these tanks were originally gifted to me and I am an affiliate, so understandably you may be wary of my opinion. However, the last thing I want to do is recommend something, you spend your hard-earned money on it, and then discover it's not actually very good. All my opinions are my own. I have not been paid or asked to do this review, and I will list both pros and cons. So let's first start off with the tanks themselves. So Diego has the 36 by 24 by 24 inch tank, and Gizmo has a 36 by 24 by 18 inch tank. Both are PVC and aluminium with standard black frames. Now the first thing we'll look at is how easy it is to assemble, since the tanks arrive flat packed. When I first got Diego's tank, there were very few instructions, so I did decide to film the whole process so it could help out anyone else putting together these tanks in the future, and actually I went back and checked out that video whilst putting together Gizmo's tank. Now the assembly, once you know how to do it, it's quite straightforward. Essentially you have these 4 poles that slot into the background. You'll need a rubber mallet for this part. Once these 4 are in place, you simply slot in the sides, top and bottom of the tank. You will need to add in these rubber pieces and silicone down the edges, and once dry you put the front of the tank on, and then you're done. It's really that simple. I'd say the longest part, and personally for me my least favourite part of assembly, is the silicone, just because it smells bad and you have to wait for it to dry and I'm impatient. But overall I'd say for a flat pack tank this is very straightforward. I'll give it 4 out of 5 because I think it can be improved with better instructions, but 5 out of 5 if you follow my step-by-step video or you've done this before, then it's just simple. As I mentioned, the vivarium is made of PVC and aluminium, so what do I think of the materials and the overall look? Now I wasn't really sure how PVC would hold up. There is a little bit of flex to it, but once you put it together it's a pretty solid and stable unit. What I will say is when moving house and we had to move Diego's tank, we did notice that due to the weight of the drainage layer and substrate, the bottom did bow a little bit as we were lifting it, so we really had to support that bottom. I think if we left the rocks and slate in, then we would have a problem. Of course, we only did this because we were moving house, and a tank like this, you know, once it's set up, generally you're not going to be picking it up and moving it about. So I will say the PVC bottom does worry me a tad, just because I don't want to overfill the tank with too many heavy things, and of course substrate can get quite heavy. However, now Diego has a stand that has a metal support through the middle, and we've had his and Gizmo's tanks stacked for a year now. I'm far less anxious. I just think if you were going to go for a very rocky look and you wanted to use a lot of real heavy rocks, it may be a tad risky. I guess this is why the universal faux rocks that come with it work quite well, but that comes in the decoration pack, which we're getting to in a moment. The other issue that I found with the materials is the aluminium did get scratched. Now, this probably happened once again when we were moving, but basically all I'd say is when you're putting together the tank or you're moving it, just be extra careful that you don't accidentally scratch it, because then you get this like annoying line on it. But I think this is the only place it's been scratched, and that was kind of on me. What I do like about the materials is they look sleek and smart. A lot of people who come and see the tank say they look very professional. Another thing you can do, because it's PVC, because it's this flat surface, is you can always wrap it. Like, you can really customize it. You say you wanted like a wooden looking tank, go and get some wooden like wrap, go do it, make a facade, so you can really customize it if you want to. I'd probably give materials 4 out of 5 only because, as I said, I did manage to scratch it and the bottom does worry me a tad. If there's a little extra support there, it would be perfect. But as I said, once it's made up, left in place, you're not likely to move it around or bump it into things, then it's perfectly fine. Next, we'll look at features and functionality of the tank. Is this really suitable for leopard geckos, and what features do I particularly like? So this is definitely suitable for leopard geckos. Both my geckos use all of the space provided. One thing I like about the front of the tank is there's quite a deep lip, I guess you'd call it, so there's plenty of room for substrate, which once again is great because then your leopard geckos can really dig and you can really build up a bioactive tank. I also really like the mesh on this tank because it's nice and wide, it doesn't block out much light. I believe it allows like 77% of UV to travel through, which if you know anything about mesh and reptile lighting, 77% is really good. It also allows really good airflow and ventilation, which is nice coming from like a wooden vivarium, since wooden vivariums have minimal airflow. Also, this allows me to mount a mini fan on top of the tank during really hot summer days. You couldn't really do that with a wooden vivarium, and sometimes the cool side needs to be cooled down because it gets hot here sometimes. Now, one downside to this mesh is I have seen crickets and locusts instinctively walk to the top of the tank and get out. However, I've now altered my feeding to offer them one at a time, ideally, so I know the gecko has caught them. And of course, if you're doing a bioactive tank, you tend to want the feeder insects to get eaten and not just go and chew on your plants or whatever. So this isn't too much of an issue for me. I also like the glass doors. They're very heavy. They are on wheels, and though they do still make a bit of sound, they don't like screech like other vivarium doors. I also absolutely love how easy it is to install equipment. I've only ever used wooden vivariums for my leopard geckos, where if you need to install a light or a heater, you have to drill and screw in equipment, which is really annoying. Whereas this is kind of the perfect hybrid of a terrarium and vivarium. So you get all the benefits of a vivarium. So it's enclosed, it's a safe space, you've got your sliding doors, and also it retains heat quite well. But then you get the cool mesh on top like you typically get with terrariums, so everything's so much easy to install. Now, an optional extra to add to this is a hood or a spacer. I really like this because it does neaten everything up. You can hide away all of your equipment, and of course the spacer allows you to stack more tanks. So say you wanted to upgrade more than one reptile tank, these all fit together nicely. So in terms of features and functionality for a leopard gecko, I would rate this 5 out of 5. So overall, I think the tank scores about 4.5 out of 5. A little side note, if you are debating between an 18 and 24 inch tall tank and you are using UV and an overhead heater, then I do personally prefer the 18-inch tank just because it's so much easier to achieve the correct distance you need between the UV and heater and the basking zone. I explained this better in the How Not to Burn Your Reptiles video, but as you can see in Gizmo's tank, the warm hide looks a little more natural and not as clunky as Diego's side, because we really had to build that up to achieve the correct UV and heat in the basking zone, but this is just personal preference. Now we're going to look at the optional decoration kits that you can buy. So you can get 3D backgrounds, flat sides, faux rocks, fake plants, and I thought I'd run through some pros that I have found with them. So the first one is the background is super tough. You can actually lay rocks and slate on it and it will hold up. I wasn't sure if it would, but it does. The geckos can happily climb up the background and they will rest and sleep on the rocks, so this allows for even more room for them to explore. The sides are easy to cut down. When you're installing them, sometimes you need to trim a little bit off, and you can simply do this with scissors. If you do get a flat piece with fake rocks, you can really customize where you install the fake rocks in the tank. So say you know that your gecko is prone to climbing up the side of the tank and you want it to have a ledge higher up so it can rest, then you can do that. If your gecko is getting a little bit old, it's not going to climb that much more, maybe you can put the rocks a little bit down. You can even put the rocks in positions where they form part of one of the hides, so you can really customize it. I also like that these are very natural looking, both the background and the fake plants. Now, of course, I do intend on going fully bioactive in the future, but it isn't always that easy, especially keeping plants alive in an arid tank. So having these realistic looking fake plants as a substitute really helps. And after 2 years of use in Diego's tank and a year in Gizmo's, the backgrounds and the rocks still look as good as they did when I first got them. They haven't faded by the light and the geckos haven't damaged them. I guess the only con when it comes to these is maybe the price. I know people are always looking for a 3D background and ideally an affordable one, and it's fair to say that these can be quite pricey. But if you're looking for quality, one that will last, then look no further. So overall, would I recommend one of these tanks and decoration kits? 100%. Sure, they're definitely not cheap, but you get what you pay for, and I can see these being long-term tanks that once you set up should last a very long time. And if you're in the US, you may like to know these are actually made in the US, so they're not like cheap imports that then private labeled and their prices are hugely inflated. Now unfortunately I don't think at this point these are readily available over here in Europe. I've just been incredibly fortunate, but hopefully in the future we'll see them over here. As I said at the beginning, links will be in the description below. I hope this video has helped. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already, but thank you for watching guys, and goodbye.